I think on some level, at one point or another, everyone has wanted to change something about themselves. Maybe you're a bit out of shape and you wish you were more athletic. You might be insecure about some of your facial features or the sound of your voice. There may be some things about you that you have altered through changing your habits, taking medication, or even undergoing surgery. Or maybe you're a white person who believes they were meant to be Korean, in which case I think you should get off of Stan Twitter and into some form of counseling. If you're chronically online, you've probably stumbled into the RCTA community at some point. But if you haven't, or if you go outside regularly, here's the gist. RCTA is the abbreviation of Race Change to Another, a niche online community centered around the pursuit of changing one's race. You might have heard of the infamous Rachel Dolezal, a white woman who posed as a black woman for years and still maintains that identity even after being exposed. And more recently, the internet suffered the online presence of Ollie London, a white British man who underwent multiple surgeries to look like the BTS member Jimin. These public figures have never claimed the RCTA label, but they're essentially the blueprint. There are other names that this community uses, mainly because RCTA has a lot of negative associations and using it invites people to troll them. They sometimes go by ECTA for ethnicity change to another, trans race, or trace. The origin of the abbreviation RCTA is pretty murky. The word transracial was coined in the 1970s to describe the unique experiences of people of color adopted into white families and vice versa. In this video, I'll only be referring to this community as RCTA, so as not to conflate transracialism as it pertains to adoptees with the way that RCTA people use it. The core belief in RCTA spaces is that race and ethnicity are social constructs and consequently that racial identity can be changed. And on some level, they're almost right. Race is a social construct, one based on human phenotypes like skin color, hair texture, and eye shape. Ethnicity is also a construct based on cultural expression and identification. Though race and ethnicity are separate entities, they are inextricably linked, and their status as social constructs doesn't diminish the impact that they've had on society. Just because something is a social construct doesn't mean that it isn't real. Race and ethnicity are deeply personal and painful topics for many different people, so it's unsurprising that the RCTA community gets a lot of backlash. And I agree with the criticism. RCTA spaces at best contribute to racial stereotyping, and at worst become echo chambers of delusion and violent racism. Unfortunately, this intense reaction makes it nearly impossible to find a public RCTA forum that isn't full of bait accounts making fun of them. Information about these groups is already scarce, and with trolls running rampant in every public forum, I quickly ran out of sources to collect information from. But I'm not a quitter. I believe in journalistic integrity, and I was determined to learn about the RCTA community at all costs. So I did what any good journalist would do. I went undercover. Before I could analyze why this community exists and the broader implications of it, I wanted to gain an insider's perspective. After all, nobody decides to just change their race on a whim, especially knowing how poor the reception will be. I wanted to see firsthand how this extremely insular community operates and what kind of things they say when they think they're among friends. But to do that, I had to come up with an alias. And it had to be believable. Based on what I've witnessed through social media, most RCTA participants tend to be white, American or Western European, female, and somewhere between 13 and 16 years old. Overwhelmingly, they're involved in K-pop or J-pop fandoms, and they typically watch anime, but not always. The most popular ethnicities in RCTA spaces are Japanese and South Korean, though they're usually just referred to with the broad term Asian. When you join an RCTA server, you must first submit what they call a face claim, or a photo of your ideal appearance in your desired race. It's common to see people using photos of K-pop idols for this. With all of this data in mind, I created a new Discord account for my persona. To raise as minimal suspicion as possible, I decided to say that I was a 16-year-old girl transitioning from white to South Korean. I named myself Rin because out of all the accounts that I saw, it was one of the names that kept popping up. For my face claim, I found a photo of a random South Korean model on Pinterest, being very careful not to choose a K-pop idol by accident because I don't know anything about K-pop and my cover would be blown if they asked me about it. I randomly generated my username on an aesthetic usernames website, and after that, all I had left to do was write a bio. I copied the format of the other profiles I had seen. Age, RCTA status, a disclaimer saying that I wasn't bait, and a cheesy K-pop quote that I found on Google Images. In the end, I thought it looked pretty convincing. but the true test was going to be getting into the servers. There are multiple websites where you can find the invite links to different Discord servers. I use Discord. Of the 18 RCTA servers listed, only 3 of them were genuine and the rest were satire. And of the 3 legitimate servers, only one of them let me in. Trolls raided it about a week later. The process of being admitted into an RCTA server is a lengthy one. As a means of weeding people out, all 3 servers I attempted to join had a series of questions I had to answer before being approved or denied access. Right off the bat, the questions were disgustingly racist, particularly anti-black. One of the servers that denied me explicitly had a disclaimer that said that they don't like black people. The other server that denied me had a question that asked the reader if they think that black people should have human rights. They only referred to black people with the N-word, with the hard R. Unfortunately, this was just the tip of the racist iceberg. When I finally got into a server primarily focused on people transitioning from white to East Asian, one of the first conversations I witnessed was a thread of bigoted jokes about Asian people with darker skin. Colorism is extremely prevalent in this community, especially in groups predominantly composed of white to East Asian members. When they weren't being actively hateful, the people in the server I joined frequently lamented about what they called racial dysphoria, or feeling disconnected from their birth race. I asked the server what that meant to them, and one girl privately messaged me this: "I felt no connection with my previous culture, no matter what I did. I felt lost and like I didn't have a culture at all. And then I discovered Japanese culture at the age of 6 to 7. I did a deep dive, and I felt that it was destined for me, that was where I was meant to be. I discovered the basics of a bunch of things and felt a deep connection with Japan from that point on." When I pressed for more detail, she admitted that by Japanese culture, she meant anime and manga. But the servers weren't just talking about wanting to spiritually change races. Members frequently asked each other for advice on changing their appearance, ranging from simple things like makeup to drastic changes like surgery. Almost all of the passing tips offered by members were related to being either extremely thin or extremely pale. One person even said that the thinner you are, the more you'll be accepted by East Asian people. One girl expressed a desire to get plastic surgery to replace her double eyelids with monolids and shape her jaw into a V shape to look like her favorite K-pop idol. One of the most popular methods for changing race in RCTA spaces is the use of subliminals, typically in the form of YouTube videos. In layman's terms, subliminals are videos that play different affirmations intending to subconsciously change the listener's thoughts, beliefs, and in the case of RCTA, appearance underneath hypnotic music. They're also pseudoscience. Subliminal messaging is a real thing, but it's highly debatable how effective it is, and it certainly can't change anything about your physical appearance. RCTA servers are full of side-by-side comparisons of people's facial features, asking the other members if they look more Asian after listening to subliminals for an extended period. The answer, of course, is no. But the RCTA community maintains its faith in the power of people whispering affirmations underneath royalty-free meditation music. But not every appearance-altering strategy is as harmless and unserious as subliminals. Some of the suggestions are downright dangerous. Members share pro-anorexia content and links to diet pills, as well as name-dropping different products that darken or lighten skin depending on the goals of the individual asking. Monobenzone cream, which induces chemical vitiligo and can leave the user with burns, is the most popular. After a week of lurking in the Discord server, I decided to branch out to the second most popular RCTA forum, the r/transrace subreddit. Interestingly, multiple people claim to have passed as their desired race and experienced racism, which some celebrated as proof that their hard work was paying off, and others bemoaned as terrifying acts of bigotry. It's hard not to laugh at the absurdity of RCTA and the people who identify with it. It's difficult to engage with them in good faith without inadvertently validating them, which I absolutely do not want to do. I think the RCTA community is delusional, but I'm talking about it because I think we can learn a lot from its existence. Because something like RCTA doesn't exist in a vacuum. It had to come from somewhere. So how exactly does a person come to believe that they need to change their race, and why does it matter? In the words of Paulo Freire, from his 1968 book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed,
the oppressor consciousness tends to transform everything surrounding it into an object of its domination. The earth, property, production, the creations of men themselves, time, everything is reduced to the status of objects at its disposal.
This reduction of human beings into objects, of people into things to be consumed, is emblematic of the white members of the RCTA community. It's not surprising to me at all that the majority of them are fans of K-pop and anime. Their perception of East Asia is based entirely off of products that they can consume and aesthetics they can emulate. Even the names they choose for themselves are ripped from TV shows, idols, and manga, as opposed to simply choosing a name that's popular in the country they claim to be connected to. They mistake their fetishization of Asian people and Asian countries for some kind of kinship. Accusations of racism are deflected with the excuse that they just love the culture, and how could that be racist? The irony in this, of course, is that racism doesn't have to be violent to be racism. In fact, this type of soft racism is most often used against East and Southeast Asians. This is Orientalism. According to Professor Edward Said,
Orientalism can be discussed and analysed as the corporate institution for dealing with the Orient. Dealing with it by making statements about it, authorising views of it, describing it by teaching it, settling it, ruling over it. In short, Orientalism is a Western style for dominating, restructuring, and having authority over the Orient.
The Orient here refers to the countries of East Asia. It's an outdated word, used by European colonists as a catch-all term for their definition of the so-called Eastern world. Orientalism, therefore, is the mode through which Western perceptions and definitions of Eastern cultures become the dominant narrative, how the West defines and thus flattens the East into a monolith. Orientalism takes many forms. Some common ones are the stereotypes associated with East Asian women, including the submissive yet seductive geisha trope. Orientalism can look like the Disney film Mulan, where all of the characters are drawn with yellow-toned skin and slanted eyes, even though Asian people vary in appearance just like any other racial group. And whether they're aware of it or not, RCTA groups are engaging in a kind of Orientalism that paints East Asian people as mythical creatures instead of human beings. It's most obvious when you look at the pictures they use for their face claims. You'll never come across a photo of a dark-skinned Cambodian woman or a short Vietnamese man. The people claiming to want to transition to Asian actually just want to transition to being a conventionally attractive K-pop idol or anime character who fits into Eurocentric standards of beauty with pale skin and double eyelids, and not the average citizen of any given East Asian country. But why does it even matter? Why should we care about some ignorant K-pop stans who want to destroy their health and drain their bank accounts to look like a different race? Because the people in RCTA servers aren't just white people who want to become people of color. Some of them are people of color who want to become white. So far, I've only really focused on the white members of the RCTA community, and that's because they're usually the loudest and most problematic ones. But there's another type of person that flocks to RCTA forums. People of color trying to make themselves look white. The first time I saw this was in the Discord server. A young Chinese girl whose family recently moved to America asked the chat, "Anybody have any tips to look more white? Like, what specific features stand out to you as Asian? People are quite racist at my school, and I'm trying to figure out how to fit in better. I'm not RCTA, I just don't want to be hate crimed." She wasn't the only one. There were dozens of posts in r/transrace from people of color grieving the violence that they've suffered and begging the subreddit to give them advice for looking more white. Many of them expressed feeling angry at themselves to the point of being suicidal for not being able to assimilate into whiteness. The accounts were devastating to read. These people are in immense pain, and they believe that the only way out is to change who they are fundamentally or die trying. It's a disturbing contrast. In the very same spaces where white people cosplay as different races for fun, there are people of color driven to extremes to try and find some peace in a world that hates them. Though white participants in RCTA frequently claim they face persecution for their transracial identity, the stakes are very different for RCTA people of color. For the former, intolerance means insults online and strangers staring in public. For the latter, intolerance could mean a death sentence. And that's why this matters. As long as white people continue to trivialize racial identities as nothing more than aesthetic choices, they'll never be able to conceptualize racism as anything more than a mild inconvenience. No matter how good they think their intentions are, white people masquerading as people of color can only perpetuate the suffering of those they claim to admire. At the end of the day, a white person pretending to be black can take off their makeup, and the black person they're imitating can't take off their skin. The RCTA community is weird. It's full of naive, delusional K-pop stans, culture vultures, plastic surgery addicts, and some of the most confidently bigoted trolls I've ever encountered on the internet. And it's also full of deeply traumatized people looking for a way to escape the hate they've had to deal with for their entire lives. Paulo Freire said that
Dehumanization, which marks not only those whose humanity has been stolen, but also, though in a different way, those who have stolen it, is a distortion of the vocation of becoming more fully human.
Maybe I'm being optimistic here, but I genuinely believe that some of the people in RCTA forums would be receptive to a nuanced dialogue about race if given the chance. Attacking and belittling them doesn't do anything but push them further into ignorance. Maybe if we were to approach them with an open hand instead of pitchforks and torches, we could actually change their minds and help them to understand why what they're doing is wrong. I think that RCTA is a prime example of what happens when we stop viewing other people as people. It's easy to feel like our personal choices have no bearing on the world around us. It's easy to forget that our self-perceptions don't form in a vacuum, and neither do our perceptions of others. But it doesn't have to be a bad thing. We have the power to challenge the systems that we grew up in. We have the power to do better for each other. All we have to do is continue to recognize each other as beings worth doing better for. Or we could just ban white people from watching anime. I feel like that would probably fix a lot of problems. This is my first time doing something like this, and it's actually for a class, so hi Professor Kim, how's it going? If you liked this content and you want to see more, subscribe to me here. I've been doing pretty well on TikTok, but in light of recent events, I will be moving to YouTube most likely, so if you subscribe, you can look forward to more video essays about weird internet communities and probably whatever form of media I get hyperfixated on. If you made it this far in the video, comment what your favorite K-pop song is. Okay.